Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordan and it is currently almost the middle of April and I've been trying to figure out what I wanted to do for a wrap up for the first 3 months of the year. Since I wasn't on BookTube, I didn't get to do monthly wrap ups, but I still wanted a way to share what I've been reading, especially some of my favorite books that I've been reading, without having to talk about every single book in a huge hour-long wrap up. That doesn't sound fun to watch. It doesn't sound fun to film or edit. So I've decided to curate it a little bit. So I'm just going to talk about my reading stats for the first 3 months of the year and then my top 10 favorites that I've read so far. So hopefully I can pass on some recommendations if you're looking for them and otherwise just catch back up so that I can do wrap-ups as I want to for the rest of the year. So to start, I read 28 books in the first 3 months of the year. That breaks down into 6 in January, 12 in February, and 10 in March. My Goodreads goal I always set at 52 books. That's just because if everything went absolutely crazy and worst came to worst, I know that's a reachable goal and I would still be happy at the end of the year to say that I read 52 books. That being said, pretty obvious that having already read 28, I am going to hit that before probably even halfway through the year. I guess kind of a loose second goal would be 100 books in a year, but I don't like to put that in writing just because you never know what's going to happen. And I don't think number of books should ever trump quality of books that you're reading and enjoyment of the act of reading, which putting a number on can definitely sometimes do. Within those 28 books, that added up to 8,311 total pages. And I'll have a little graph here that shows the page breakdown per month, correlates really closely to the number of books each month. In that, I don't count audiobooks as physical pages. That's just a personal preference. You count pages however you want to count pages. And then a really exciting and interesting fact about the books that I've read so far this year is that I have put a huge focus on reading books that I already own. So at the start of the year, I think I had 40 or 50 unread books on my bookshelf. And of the 28 books that I read so far, 26 of them were books that I already owned. So now the number of books I have on my shelf that are unread is like less than 20, and I'd love to get that down to like under 10 by the end of the year so that I can be constantly rotating in books that I own and books that I purchase I can read right away. So that's awesome. 26 of the books were owned, 2 were borrowed, and by borrowed I mean I got them on audiobook services like Scribd or Hoopla, and I don't own the physical copy as well. Talking about genres, the biggest 2 categories of genres that I usually read and that I read so far is contemporary and mystery thriller. I read 8 of each of those. The next biggest category is actually nonfiction. I read 4 of those and I'm happy with that. I definitely like to rotate in nonfiction pretty regularly. I also read 3 historical fictions, 2 classics, 2 sci-fis, and 1 dystopian book. And then ratings. So I actually had 0 1-star ratings for the start of the year, 4 2 stars, 9 3 stars, 10 4 stars, and 5 5-star books, which equals out to an average rating of 3.57. I'm definitely happy with that. 15 total 4 and 5-star books, which I think is excellent. I already have some books from this first quarter that I know are going to be top 10 favorites for the year. So that's really exciting. And it's been pretty great having mostly read off of my shelf, having not that many 1 and 2-star books. I think that says a lot about my buying choices and knowing my own preferences when it comes to buying books. So with that said, let's get into some of the favorites from the beginning of the year. So I just scrolled through my Goodreads and I picked out some of the 4 and 5-star books that really have stuck out to me as favorites that are contenders for favorites of the entire year. You will hear about all 5 of my 5-star books and then 5 4-star books as well. In the future, or if you want to go back and look at all of the books that I read in January, February, and March, I do keep really close track of my reading on Goodreads. I write a review for every single book that I read, as well as, of course, rate it. So you can always follow me on there to see what I am currently reading, and then once I finish a book, my immediate thoughts, especially if I continue this format going forward of really only talking about my favorites. So to start with, actually the very first book that I read in all of 2021, I wanted to pick something that I was really excited about and that I thought had a good chance of being a favorite. Being a 5-star book, I picked up Layla by Colleen Hoover and was so pumped that it ended up fulfilling all of my expectations. I'm a huge Colleen Hoover fan. I love all of her work, even her romance, as someone who self-proclaims to not enjoy romance all that much. Hers I really do like because it's emotional, but more recently, as you may know, she's delved into more thrillers, and in this case more paranormal romance, which is definitely a deviation from her normal type of writing, but I mean, what can I say? I loved it. This book is about this guy named Leeds who meets this woman named Layla, and she's basically the woman of his dreams. They get into a relationship, and then things happen to change everything. And I don't think you really should know much more than that going in. I don't think you need to know much more going in. I think it'll be the most impactful if you know nothing, and just expect this to be a little bit weird, a little bit creepy, a little paranormal, but overall a really fun and unpredictable ride. I rated this 5 stars. I don't know what more I can say about it. It creeped me out, which I really like. It kept me guessing. There were twists and turns that I did not see coming. There were questions that I was burning to have answered by the end of the book, and I just thought it was so fun. So I definitely would recommend it if you are a Colleen Hoover fan, if you're open to trying anything from her. I don't know much about the paranormal romance genre, so I don't know if it lives up to some other books in that genre, but in general, it worked for me, and definitely a favorite so far this year. Another book that I read and absolutely loved in January is The Dream Daughter by Diane Chamberlain. This is quite a different type of book. So this is sort of a historical fiction meets science fiction. This has been recommended by a couple of my friends on BookTube over and over again. Jacqueline and Gwen both really like this. This is about a woman who lives in 1970 and becomes pregnant and is told by her doctors that her baby has a heart defect that at that time they can't fix, and so it's fatal. And then someone in her life comes to her and tells her that he actually has a way of bringing her to the year 2001 when technology is advanced enough to save her baby. And so she has to make the decision of whether she wants to do that and try to save the life of her unborn child and take on obviously the risks that come along with that. This was a lot more hard-hitting. I really liked the science fiction elements of it, but at the core it is really that emotional book about a mother and her unborn baby and what lengths she would go to save the baby. As a mom, maybe it hit me extra hard, but even for people who aren't parents, I think it's a super well-written, well-done book that a lot of people find a lot of enjoyment in reading. So I highly recommend it if you haven't heard of it or read it yet. And then the last favorite from January is Neverworld Wake by Marisha Pessl. So Marisha Pessl also wrote a book called Night Film, which I read I think last year and didn't really love. It was a little convoluted. It was a super long book, a mystery thriller that just didn't pay off to me in the end. This is her previous book to that, and it's more of a YA science fiction mystery thriller, I guess I would say. I truly think it's best if you go in knowing literally nothing about it, but to just give a little bit of an enticing nugget. It's a book that kind of does that Groundhog's Day, living the same day over and over again trope. And it has to do with, I think, 5 teenagers who are all going through this together. It's really fast-paced. It's a really short book, so it gets to the point. And again, lots of twists and turns. I just flew through it because I felt like I really needed to know what was going to happen at the end. And it lived up to all of those expectations. If you're someone who likes sci-fi or mystery thrillers but typically doesn't like YA, I would still recommend giving this a chance, because I also don't typically like YA because it's not dark enough or it's not twisty enough, or it doesn't deal with, I don't know, hard enough topics, but I don't think that this falls into that. I think that this is just as good as any adult sci-fi or mystery thriller. And so I hope that you will take that recommendation. If you have not read this yet, if you've seen it and heard of Marisha Pessl but not given her a chance, to definitely do it with this book. And from now on, I will be watching what she puts out, and if it seems like something in a similar vein to this, I will definitely be picking it up. Moving into February, one of the best books that I read is On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. I don't think I need to give too much of a synopsis about this because Angie Thomas is super popular on BookTube and just in general. She's the author of The Hate You Give, obviously an incredibly poignant book and movie in our world, especially now with all of the issues our country and world is facing. But this is her second novel, totally different, not a sequel, although there are some references to The Hate You Give in this book. So I'm glad I read that one first, this one second, and then her third book third, which I'll get to. But this is about a teenage rapper named Bree trying to, I guess, kind of get her big break. And of course she's dealing with other things within her life and her family. I rated this 4 stars. I didn't think it was quite as impactful, as hard-hitting as The Hate You Give. I don't know that it was necessarily intended to be, so I don't think that's the worst thing I could say about it. But I did still have a really great time reading it. I obviously own a physical copy, but I listened to this on audiobook as well, and that was excellent. Because she is a rapper, there are raps and rap battles within the book, and so it was really cool hearing those come to life in audio form, so definitely recommend that as well. But basically, Angie Thomas can do no wrong. If you haven't read it yet, definitely do that. I gave it 4 stars. Next one, kind of a controversial one, is Game Changer by Neal Schusterman. So this is a brand new book that just came out this year. Neal Schusterman is the author of the Scythe series, which I have read, I have loved, and BookTube loves. This is just his newest book. It's a young adult science fiction that has to do with this teenage boy who finds himself in, I guess you would say, alternate realities or slightly different realities from his normal life. And he has to basically figure out how to go back to his normal life. This book has gotten mixed reviews because it tackles a lot of serious topics, serious moral issues like racism and sexism and classism, and people have said that they don't think a YA book should be trying to push those lessons onto you, or I don't know if they didn't like how it was done or what, but I actually thought it was great that it included those. I didn't think that it did it in a way that was trying to necessarily push things onto you. I think, in my opinion, it was done in a little more of a way of just to get you to think about these issues as they present themselves in everyday life. Without giving too much away, one of the kind of alternate realities this guy finds himself in is a United States that is completely different racially. And he sees really how that affects some of his closest friends and family. And it makes him think a little bit deeper about these issues. And I don't think that the book is trying to say that this white main character has all the answers or learns all the answers by the end of the book. I don't think it should say that. I just took it more as, I'm writing this sci-fi book, wouldn't it be great if it also included some of those more hard-hitting topics and got you to think a little more critically about these issues that actually do impact us every day, and this just kind of shows us how. So I really liked it. Criticisms are totally valid from everyone who's giving them, but I thought I would give my opinion on the matter as well. And I ended up giving this 4 stars. Not a perfect book, but I thought it was a really fun time, and I did appreciate kind of those added conversations. Speaking of moral and racial conversations, another one is When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This is a mystery thriller sort of book about gentrification happening in New York and how it's affecting our black female main character and our white male main character. Basically, they're kind of coming together, teaming up to undo this or stop this from happening in their neighborhood. This book also gets lots of mixed reviews. A lot of people saying that it's just too slow and it's not actually a thriller. I'll agree with that. The pacing is a little slow, and to a lot of us, we wouldn't consider some of these situations to be thrilling or scary. That's not to say that they're not thrilling or scary for other people and that we shouldn't respect that and learn to understand that through books like this. But in my opinion, even for being slow, this book is still way better than so many mystery thrillers I read that aren't fast-paced, that are just family drama between rich white people. I would way rather read about people who are dealing with, you know, these hard-hitting issues that I don't know a lot about or really anything about. If a book can teach me about that and expose me and change my perspective a little bit, that's obviously a really good thing. And so I think this book fulfills its purpose in that way. And just because I wasn't terrified to flip the page doesn't mean it's not a worthwhile book and can't still be classified a thriller. So with that being said, I gave it 4 stars. There are a lot of really great discussions about this book on BookTube. I will link some videos, some book club discussions that I've watched about it that I've really enjoyed. And I'm excited to see what Alyssa Cole puts out in the future. I know she is typically a romance writer, but if she does continue to write these mystery thriller type books, I will continue to pick them up. And then last favorite from February, and actually my only 5-star in February, is Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas. So this book is actually a prequel to The Hate U Give, which is Angie Thomas's debut novel. This follows the dad of the main character in that book, and we follow him as a teenager. And so we're really following his life becoming a dad and making the decisions that set up the events in The Hate U Give. It was excellent. I mean, I don't know what I really have to say about it. I think reading about a teenage dad is a really interesting perspective and not something we get enough of. I had a great time reading it. I thought it was a really important story. I love that it added to the Hate U Give story. And again, there are some connections to both the Hate U Give and On the Come Up. I love that Angie Thomas's books all kind of intertwine, not in a way where you have to read the other books to understand this one, but that it just adds to the experience if you kind of catch those references and the overlapping characters. So I don't know if there are a ton of people who need convincing to read this book if you liked The Hate U Give and or On the Come Up, but if you haven't gotten to this yet, it is a new release from this year. I definitely recommend it. I picked it up right away and was not disappointed. 5 stars. Okay, and then getting into March favorites, the first one is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I finally read it. I feel like everyone on BookTube has read it and has an opinion about it. It is an adult romance book about 2 authors who are both in writing slumps, and so they decide to switch genres and kind of make a bet that they can write a book in each other's genres and get it published and kind of prove that the other person's genre is easier to write than theirs, whatever, and then obviously it turns into a romance. I really like this. I gave it 4 stars, not 5 stars. Wasn't perfect to me, but I had a really fun time reading it. I was flying through it. I loved the emotional aspects. That's definitely what I look for in romance books. I loved the adult issues that they were going through because they are both adults. I didn't think it was slow by any means for those reasons, but I can maybe see why other people might think that it is if you are used to and enjoy sort of the more light and fluffy type romance books. That being said, this in general worked for me. I don't know how much more I have to say. Not life-changing, but an enjoyable romance book for me, and I'm very interested to see what I think of other Emily Henry books in the future, because I know she's written several and has a super hyped one coming out this month, which I did order for Book of the Month, so look forward to me reading that in the near future. The next one is my last 5-star book that I have to talk about, and it is Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This is a, I guess it would be a YA contemporary book, very hard-hitting and very unique. So this is about a boy who has something happen in his life that he wants to get revenge for, and so he is on his way to do that, and he's on the elevator down in his building on his way to go outside and do the thing, when he is stopped several times and visited by people basically from his past, kind of trying to knock some sense into him. And what's really interesting and unique about this book is that it is written in verse. Not sure how well you can read that, but it obviously puts a whole different spin on the book itself, and I think in a really great way. It doesn't waste a word. It makes it so that every word, every poem, every character in this book has a purpose. It's not wasting time, it's getting right to that purpose, and I thought it was super impactful. Because it's written in verse, it's super fast to get through. It was fantastic. I know Jason Reynolds has written all kinds of other books, and I definitely want to dive more into his backlist. I'm sure there are more books out there of his that I will love, and so I'm excited to find them. And then last but not least is a 4-star book that I don't have to spend too much time on, but it is my favorite, probably most generic mystery thriller from the first quarter. So it's called Too Good to Be True by Corolla Lovering. I actually read this as part of my most recent video reading new Book of the Month books. This is actually your pretty standard domestic mystery, domestic thriller between a man and his ex-wife and his new girlfriend. As you would assume, there are lots of secrets and histories and things that all kind of tie and twist together. I typically don't like domestic thrillers, and so this one really surprised me that I did like it. It wasn't too over the top in the drama aspect, and I thought it did a really good job of tying all of the histories of these characters together and making me intrigued in all of the characters and timelines equally. Only reason it's not getting a full 5 stars from me is because I'm a sucker for cheap thrills and completely unexpected twists. So I was kind of looking for something at the very end to like make me question everything and just blow my socks off. That didn't happen, so it didn't get full 5 stars, but the rest of the book itself I thought was completely solid enough that I gave it 4 stars. So that's it for the top 10 books that I read so far this year. Obviously some real winners in there, and I'm so excited to see what else I'm going to read throughout the year. Let me know how your reading year has started. Are you on track to meet your goals, or do you have some catching up to do. Either way, best of luck, and I would love to hear about some of your favorite books that you have read so far this year if you have any. But other than that, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.